With the town. You know?
Yeah.
Does.
We're down to a minute. Let everyone come in situated.
He's coming in more right now, but I think the goal is 3 days a week.
Okay, we are at 6 o'clock and I am going to call the meeting to order for the City of Ione Planning Commission. And I invite you all to join me as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation.
Indivisible,
Liberty and justice for all.
Should we do our roll call, Janice?
I think we just don't need a motion to approve the agreement. Guys.
Ready? Commissioner Bowl,
Here.
Commissioner Caputo,
Here.
Commissioner Politi,
Present.
Vice Chairman Gebhardt,
Here.
and Chairman Hoiska.
Present. We have an agenda that has been generated for us and typically we would call for an approval of the agenda if someone would like to make a motion.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
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 And not in favor?
Nay.
And with that, the ayes have it. We will go ahead and take the agenda in, and on our consent calendar, we have an approval of the minutes from September 9th. And on the September 9th minutes, did anyone have any comments or questions or concerns?
I have one. I was wondering, the thing that Jim Scully brought up about the bypass and to get some input from the city council on that. Has anything been
Well, I think
said, investigated, looked at?
at this time for the acceptance, we're kind of looking for if you're feel that the public comment is satisfactory or sufficient to be brought in as part of the agenda record. To answer your question, I do not have any update.
Anybody got an answer? That'd be a no.
I do believe there are numerous things being looked at right now, in a bigger scope. So I do believe that there's numerous things being looked at right now, in part of a bigger, broader scope.
Uh-huh.
So I think at some point in the near future, when accurate information is obtained, I think there will be an update at some point in the
Okay.
future. Okay.
Thank you.
With no other comments, did anyone have any desire to make a motion to approve the September minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 think that's 5 ayes to approve the September consent calendar. And we do not have any presentations that I'm aware of at this time. At this time, we would then move on to public comment for items not on the agenda. And we are going to be mindful of our 4 minutes.
I'd like to know if on 4, I think it is, or 3, will I be able to discuss about right-of-ways and lot adjustments? I think that should be brought up. The reason I say that is Village 10, and I was on the planning commission in the front of it, the north towards 104. After we voted on it to okay it, I looked at it and I spotted a red line. I brought it up at the council meeting. And April says, oh, it's just a minor lot line adjustment. 12.5 acres, half of the industrial park. And then we never heard a word about it on the planning commission, never brought it up. And I'd like to know who's responsible for that. Is that the engineer that checks the plans? How come they ain't here telling us about it? And there's a lot of right-of-ways that we don't know about. And all this should be brought up. I think it's very serious. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments at this time?
Patty Fisher, Mizoraka, Ione. I'm just wanting to address the planning commission to find out what is going on as far as changing properties within Ione from commercial properties to multi-use, or not sure, transitional. We were here right about a year ago to have this done. And I'm calling in regards to, or I'm talking in regards to the property that Pete and I own on Plymouth Highway, 15 Plymouth Highway. Because right now, council has given us last year I don't know, I guess it was a waiver because we bought the property after it had been burnt in 2019. We bought it in 24. We bought it in about July 1st of 24. So that's been a year and a half ago. And we got a waiver to be able to rebuild within 3 years. So planning commission needs to know that it's not just the city of Ione and you don't rule the world, that state of California does. And they are now not allowed, we're sort of at a standstill right now because we have a live gas line on that property right now. Not that I want that really in the newspaper, but we have a live gas line there and we have been waiting for really since July of 24. We were in touch with PG&E in August of 24. They screwed up and ran into Pete at Starbucks in December of 24 with deer in the headlights and was like, oh, I forgot to get that request in to get that gas line cut off, which was months later. We have emails that will show that we were in contact with them then in August of 24, but she did not submit the paperwork to Caltrans to cut up the highway on Highway 124 to cut the gas line until December 31st of 2024. We've now hit December 31st, 2025, a year later, and it's still not done. I have pulled every string with every single person, probably many in this room, to try and get this to happen. They claim that it's in the works, but your 3-year to rebuild from the council for a property that's, whether it's burnt or it has lead-based paint or asbestos, because they've got to jump through hoops for that, your 3-year period may not work. And it may have to be revisited, because we're running on a wing and a prayer right now for that. Because that 3 years, really started when Pete and I bought it in December of, or July of 24. So you can do the math. And when you're trying to build a house by yourself, it's not easy. So that 3-year window may need to be revisited. But that, barring that, that's just part of it. But we would like to get this project going, and it has nothing to do with the city of Ione. It's really the state of California. But once we're done, we really want to sell it as a multi-use property. I can't sell it. I'm being told right now I cannot sell it as a commercial property, because I'm building a house there. I'm building a 2-story house there, and we're on our way. So I just kind of wanted to let everybody know what's going on. Jody's here, so he's kind of hearing what I'm saying as far as the 3-year window. So we've got a few little problems going on, but we really need.
We do. And Patty, I'm so sorry. We've just hit our 4 minutes, but I see Susan is here, and what I would like to do is address.
So, well, first of all, I'm sorry that you're having to deal with PG&E and Caltrans in that manner. I feel your pain with a
Yeah.
lot of projects. We get slowed down by PG&E in particular. Who is telling you that you can't sell that property as commercial?
Real estate and
Okay.
insurance,
That's
and
not-
insurance.
that's
And
not
insurance are telling us the same thing.
It doesn't, it has nothing to do with the structure. Okay,
Yeah.
you can have a business that looks like an apartment building. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, if it has commercial zoning, you are an existing non-conforming, which you did get the exception waived, that 3-year exception was waived. And I don't believe that the city council put another 3 years on that. I think they just gave you an exception from that rule.
We had 3 years from 24. Yeah. And according to county records, we're listed as a residential. So
That-
if
Okay,
if-
I don't mean to interrupt, but the county is not the keeper of the zoning in the cities.
No,
And they base their maps or their use codes based on what's actually being there used, not what the actual zoning is in there. So, and I get this confusion all the time. People are like, but the county said, it's the city is the keeper of the zoning for the city. So that is zoned commercial. The direction from the planning commission was not to change the zoning, but to change the description of what was allowed in the zoning. And we're working on all of those changes to the zoning code. That not only that, but there's changes to the subdivision code, and there's a bunch of things that we're working on right now to bring all at one time, so we don't have to piecemeal these changes. But that is in the works to change that to allow for residential in that commercial zone.
that would be
And that
great.
solves a lot of problems in the city that we have with, residentials that are not existing, non-conforming. So we're working on that. But in terms of being able to sell that as even if you built that as a house, you have that commercial zoning. If somebody wanted to turn that house into a dentist office or a retail shop, your zoning allows for that to happen. So I don't want to speak ill of your realtor. I don't know who that is, but that's not true that you can't sell it as a commercial property.
It's not just a realtor, it's our insurance. And Pete and I have 2 commercial businesses that we've had since 1996, and one with the mini storage
Right.
since 21. And my insurance people have said there, if an insurance company really wanted to slice hairs, if your home burned and it was deemed commercial, my insurance people, my commercial insurance, as well as my residential, is saying, Yeah, they could come in and say, hey, this is commercial property. This isn't a residence. And no, we're not gonna pay. You might have to go to court to get that to happen. That's the only reason why we're pushing that.
Okay.
And that is really, it's just deeming what the property actually is. There was a house built there in 1948. It has always been a home ever since then. And that's what we would like it to stay. If it's deemed multi-use, that's great. I mean, that's even better because then someone could have a residence or a commercial property there. But
Or
the fact that
both
it
at
says
the same
commercial
time.
is the biggest problem right
Okay.
now. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with what
Right.
the insurance, because that's outside my wheelhouse, but
You
yeah.
know, maybe it'd be a good idea to start hunting different insurance people. You know,
That's tough.
that's number one.
That's
And
tough.
the other thing is as far as the gas line, have you contacted the PUC,
Oh, yeah. No,
And-
we've had discussions with,
State Fire Marshal?
we've gone through just about everything we could go through
Mm.
as far as getting that to happen. And it's Caltrans who runs the road. Who runs the road there, and that's Newsom, who's telling them what to do as far as cutting the gas off, because you cannot have, well, you can have gas at a residence if you would like, but you're gonna pay $7,000 to $10,000 to keep it. And that's just not in the budget to build a house. So
And then
it's,
you-
when your house burns, you get electricity, whether you like it or not, whether you like it or not, according to Governor Newsom. You don't get gas.
Well, and Patty, the point that I was hoping would cut through some of the detail of your exact circumstance is that you also came into the April 8th Planning Commission meeting and had verbatim the same conversation. And then I also brought this up at our August 12th meeting, in which we specifically asked about 15 Plymouth Highway burning down, needing to be rebuilt, 3 years ordinance. And now here we are in January, having yet again the same conversation, and this has yet to be agendized. We have yet to have had this matter taken into a proper format. It continues to be discussed in this kind of circumstance. And I just don't think anybody intends on that being how these matters are meant to be resolved, or the real use of this commission and the very limited gathering time that we've had.
If I could address this briefly, which I have before ad nauseum, I think. First of all, I'm glad you got this exception from city council and you know that, but I'm not really sure. I mean, to me, just legally, the 3-year approach, that's what they used, but to me, it really doesn't make sense because this was zoned straight commercial before the house burnt down. It's been commercial and, you know, they gave you some kind of a, you know, leeway, and I'm glad they did, but I completely agree, this needs to be changed. And Susan, I think this is something that really can't wait on the other stuff, and it's not, when this came up, I looked at that zoning and I looked around, and this affects, I forget the exact number, but it's over 20 houses,
Yes.
mostly right around Main Street area, that were built as residences, have always been nothing but residences. One of them was a real estate office for a while that the guy lived in, but other than that, and now they're zoned straight commercial. So, I mean, you're not, if anything were to happen to any of these others, they're in the same boat. They can't rebuild as residential.
They can rebuild as residential. It's what's called an existing non-conforming.
Well, okay, they stand corrected. They can rebuild, but then you run into all these other problems with insurance, et cetera. And here's what gets me. I talked to two people that were on the city council when this thing passed, when these were changed to straight commercial. And both of them I ran into more or less by accident. Ron Smiley was one, Dan Epperson was another. He was out front here. They both said that that was not what they intended to happen. what they wanted with that change in zoning was to give people more leeway with what they did with their property. Our city planner at the time, Christopher Jordan, I mean, openly would state he wanted to make Ione like, the next Elk Grove. So somewhere along the line, I firmly believe he just put in that little, it's just that one little letter that changes it in that little chart, I don't think that was meant to be there in the first place. Certainly, at least, 2 of the 5 city council members didn't want it to be that way. And I'm just thinking, you're right in the middle of this right now, and you're waiting on, some
Caltrans.
bigger thing to happen. And I understand that, from the city's point of view, but it puts you really in a hell of a position. And all these, other people with these houses are, potentially the same kind of thing. And it seems like such a simple fix to me.
Okay.
And my personal feeling, I would ask that maybe we could just like separate that out.
Pull it out and
Do it and get it
run
done.
it separately than from all the other ordinance changes.
Yeah, please.
I thought we've requested this a few times, is why I am finding it a little exasperating, because I've literally heard this exact appeal at least twice. And I find them in the minutes. I find the detail recorded, and yet there's no action that is being taken or for any meaningful resolution. When instead we're just requesting this, a homeowner comes and pleads for assistance again. And I think the point that Vice Chair Gebhardt is making is really relevant, especially to what we have on our agenda this evening, which is, why are we here if we're not here to help serve private homeowners use their property as they have purchased and intended? Like, I don't understand why we are creating these circuitous routes for people to have to go through. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I just think that this needs to be either this is brought and agendized and it's addressed, or this gets resolved at this ministerial level and there's resolution. But we just cannot continue to have this be like an 8th time this is brought to the commission without resolution. It's just not, I just don't think that's appropriate.
I'm curious, and we have the mayor here tonight.
Commissioner Gephardt, I don't mean to interrupt, but this is a non-agenda item, so
Yeah.
I do want the commission to try to wrap up the remarks and state of the agenda. The staff has heard the comments, and I think there should be follow-up.
It looks like we have another public
We
comment.
have
as
one
we are
public
still
comment
within
since
that
it's not
period.
on the agenda. I am one of those other houses. And I would say I am in support of it getting fixed as soon as possible. It technically might not hinder you, but I know when we purchased our house through a private party, and when I tried to get a loan through a loan company, there's a lot of confusion because it says commercial. So then they're like, well, we really can't give you an appraisal on it because it's commercial, but you're really resident, so you're just stuck with nowhere to go because they can't figure out the system on their end to give you an appraisal so you can actually get the loan. So it just adds a lot of confusion. And if I had said, I think it was to our planner at the time, which was not Susan, I said, well, what am I going to do if my house burns down? You guys are telling me I can't build a house. And like, oh, you can't, but that's never going to happen. Well, you don't know that.
Here we are.
Yeah, so they're a perfect example of, yes, well, actually, that road has several houses that burnt down, 3 of them within a block of each other. So, yeah, I'm in 100% of support of getting it changed where anybody who's commercial, you can be, because even that transition had that little, I think that was the confusion where it was called transition. You thought you could be one or the other, but the transition meant you could only be residential until you stopped occupying it, and then it had to turn to commercial. And that's where that little nuance changed everything as opposed to what we thought we were getting, which was a multi-use.
Thank you. So with that, do we have any further public comments at this time?
Hi, how you doing? My name's Stephen Bardwaj. I've been a part of this community about 20 years. I'm in the process of, I actually own a corner here on Main Street. I'm trying to get a use permit. So I believe I've already dotted every I, crossed every T, and I'm waiting with money burning a hole in my pocket to spend it here in this town. And I'm getting told, just hold on, just hold on. So I'm just trying to get some clarity. I need to get a use permit so I can allow me to go through and get construction plans and get something else presented. That way it allows me to keep moving forward on that project.
I was just going to say your application is being has been distributed to staff and
Okay.
to the responsible agencies. And I'm just waiting for comment back on them.
No worries.
And then we'll get it agendized.
And
So-
I'm like I said, I'm just here just to double check and see what's going on and what
Yep.
the holdup may be. Under my understanding was with the paper trail I had with the emails, it has already been checked off. Other comments that were made, they've already been addressed. And so that's what I'm trying to
Right,
understand.
that was the preliminary review. So we allowed development to come in and do a preliminary review. It just goes to in-house in staff.
Okay,
Then I have a obligation under the California Environmental Quality Act to circulate that outside to other responsible agencies like Caltrans,
okay,
Fish and Wildlife, if there's any issues there, SHPO, Historic Office, Office of Historic Preservation, et cetera. That's all been done, and I'm waiting for the responses to come back, and it's tentatively scheduled for the February Planning Commission meeting.
okay. No, I just want to double check and touch base.
Yeah.
It's obviously been over 120 days since I turned everything in. So I didn't want to start, another paper trail and trying to figure out answers that where I was like, you know what, I see in a meeting here, it hasn't been one since September. I'm going to take time out of my day to come over here and see what's going on so I can actually get an answer or some resolution before I leave here
Right.
today. Obviously, if it's going to be February, I'll be back again next month. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate your making your comment today. And thank you, Susan, for providing some update on that. That we can anticipate some activity for February. Any other comments at this time? No one on Zoom? Okay, thank you. And with that, we will close the public comment period. And I will be turning the regular agenda over to these folks over here.
Let me start. Go ahead. So there's 3 things on the agenda, but I wanted to start with the process of putting things on the agenda. We talked about this a little bit at the last meeting. And then the city manager called and asked me a question, and he's like, who is in charge of the planning commission agenda? And, really it's not something that's established by ordinance. And it's in my 30 years, I've never been asked that question. It's always been as I get process projects, I put them on the agenda. As policy updates come, or annual housing reports are done, or any of the other work orders that the city council has directed me to work on, or work orders from the city manager has directed me to work on, that I have budget to work on, that's when I've put things on the agenda. So, the city attorney's interpretation is that I'm the keeper of the agenda. And I guess that's the case, because without having it gone through the planning department, it really doesn't end up there. There's no mechanism really to put things on the agenda. Does that make sense?
No,
I'm
actually,
happy
it doesn't.
if staff can
Oh,
offer some comments as well, and then take all the questions, of course. Thank you for having me here, Commission. I know you got an email from me. I'm happy to be here in person to discuss all this further. Before I get into it, staff is not against the commission. We're here on your team, and we're here to find a solution and try to identify some fixes to how we can get these items facilitated and get some more agenda items. But I do think there are some clarifications that staff can offer. And one thing I just wanted to describe why this commission is different from some of the other committees in this city, like Parks and Rec, or the Creek Committee, which are a little more, as I understand, citizen committees and self-run, and there's not a lot of staff support. And the reason why the commission is different is because of the scope of the commission and how serious it is and how it's governed by state law and ordinances, and that you make rulings on actual development applications under the ordinances of the city. And one of those requirements is this quasi-judicial capacity that the Planning Commission sits in. And so every applicant that comes here has a fair hearing, neutral decision makers without having made up their mind. Everything that's presented before you on an agenda, you're seeing for the first time, just like any opponent or anyone else in the public. So we need to really preserve that record to make sure it's clear and that there's no prejudging a project. And that is just in some way how the system is built. As the application gets processed, it goes through SEQA review, staff prepares a recommendation, and it gets to you at the meeting. So one concern of commissions having their meetings without any staff report, staff involvement or presence is just the legal concerns of staff needs to be involved in the discussion because they're the ones aware of how it might impact pending applications and just keeping you in your role as the final decision makers and letting staff process those applications. The other part is because of those limitations, the agenda is really going to be driven by the city planner. And I know that there's been some agenda item requests and interest in having more meetings. We think there's a way to do that and to get some of these requests to the council. But I also want to encourage the commission to think about yourselves as an extension of the council and that the council is the policymaking body and the planning commission is the one that evaluates applications against those ordinances and general plans that are already in effect. So when there's a request item that might involve staff time because they have to go study it or prepare it, or that council needs to actually authorize the direction of if there's a general plan element that you want updated, or if there's a rezoning you want considered, first we have to take that to the council to see if that's something that they want to authorize staff time for, or if they want the commission to study that further. So those are some of my initial remarks on why Planning Commission is just a little more limited in meeting on its own without staff involvement, and why the agenda, just with all the legal limitations of the Brown Act, due process, and fair hearing, and how we don't know how pending applications would be affected if you were just to meet on your own and offer your remarks. Okay. Which is why the agenda is really going to be staff driven. And I think there are some ways to get some of these requests to the council for consideration, whether that be a standing item on the agenda for study or request items that the Planning Commission would like staff to take up or the council to authorize. There's every time there's a new year or quarterly meetings of Planning Commission requests, I think there's a way to accomplish some of these things, but on a month-to-month agenda basis, those agenda items are largely just going to come to you from staff because this commission is one where staff really does the heavy lifting.
May I make a statement on your explanation? I heard every word you said. I understand what you're saying. One of the things is you weren't here for the last 10 years, okay? You don't know what has gone on, okay? Just like Larry pointed out, property lines moved just a few feet and it's 12 acres, okay? The craziness of the planners prior to Susan, okay, is unbelievable. It's almost criminal. In fact, it is criminal, okay? The developers haven't been held for some reason. The city council, planning commission, the citizens of Ione haven't held the developers to any of the promises. They let them slide on giving us a firehouse. They let them slide on giving us property. They let them slide on everything. They actually narrowed streets. Shakely, they took 8 feet out of Shakely just so they could keep the elevation of 4 homes on both sides of the street. Okay, then this is what happened. I'm not lying. Okay, this was brought up. Nobody did anything. Nobody did anything. So now you have a commission that's concerned about the past. And I can't change the past, I understand, and there's only so much you can do about the future. But we have to do something about the future. And having discussions and meetings, putting mandates on what the future will bring, okay? I'll give you another example. The Aragon and Bunts, whatever, they just submitted plans to our engineer for how many, 1,100 homes?
Only
Okay,
before you, just before you go too far, I just want to, because that application is going to come to you soon. So I just want,
No,
I
I
just want you to be
understand, I
careful about your
understand
comment.
that.
Okay.
I understand that, okay? I understand that. But things like that, we should be able to first have knowledge of it, okay? Because we need to be ready, okay? And we should have the right to discuss that. We're the planning commission. We don't want that 1,100 homes. I'll tell you that right now.
So I need to, so,
Okay.
I really, Commissioner, I'm going to, just legally, I'm going to advise you to just stop making comments about the project.
Mr.
Well,
Verinsky,
I'm just going to advise you to just stop your comments about that.
Can I interject here, please?
Because this is the reason, because this is the reason.
Yeah,
So if staff isn't here and we can't prepare and we can't advise on the legal limitations of all this,
I just want to go into one thing, and it's nothing specific on.
because they watch these meetings for comments like that.
Absolutely. In that letter that you sent to us,
December 17th? That
there
one?
was, you mentioned a case in there, but you didn't really, I mean, you gave just a brief thing of what it stood for. But I think it's worth going into a little bit more depth of this Petrovich versus City of Sacramento. This was just, what, 2022, was it? 4 or 5 years ago? Six years, whatever it was. In that, and correct me if I
Sure.
get off, it was a developer. They were doing, a development. Part of what they wanted to do was a gas station. That passed the planning commission. It went to the Sacramento City Council. One of the city council members had expressed his opinion against it prior to the meeting. And even though the city council passed it, the court found the city council liable, and this went to the California Supreme Court, and they upheld it. It applies to us. And like these developers, they do stuff in El Dorado Hills, they're up on this stuff, believe me. That one planning commission or city council member cost the city of Sacramento 65 million bucks for expressing his opinion before the meeting. So we have to be careful that we don't.
I would just say it's
Acknowledge.
just critical
Critical.
because of the legal liability we could have, and that it would overturn the decision. Then you're recused from the project, and then we're stuck having trouble with the quorum for getting this project through and just giving them their right to a hearing. So it's
That's
just,
pretty much of an accurate.
yeah, I thought that was a great summary. And one of the takeaways for me from that case is that it's a very low bar.
It's a very low bar.
And it just had,
I would just ask that, or maybe you already have, but give that little same summary that I just gave to the city council. Maybe you already have, but so they're like really aware of what it means. It's a recent case. It went through the.
but it's just, it's items like this where there are so many laws and regulations that govern the scope of what this commission deals with. And you have professionals here that are here to prep you and guide you. And it puts us in a lot of trouble if we allow the commission to completely control its own agenda and schedule its own meetings. So there has to be staff involvement. It has to be staff guided. And just the structure of the roles with staff is the one who has to process the application and get the documents to you. And there are things we can do to make sure, right, we can get you the agenda documents with more than 3 days' time before a hearing. There are things like that we can do before those big projects come to you. If you have more questions at a hearing and you want to continue it, those things are perfectly okay. But we really want to protect the record before it gets to you.
I have one other question, I guess. In this, basically, our relatively new whole, zoning ordinance passed, and I think that also 2022, which I want to discuss a little bit. But first of all, one simple thing, under responsibilities of the planning commission, this is on page 4. D, this is for the planning commission, initiate studies of amendments to this title and make recommendations to the city council for amendments to this title.
Correct.
And I've been on the planning commission through, I think, 3 or 4 city planners now. And they have all told us one thing that, we should be doing is looking at the zoning code and looking for anomalies and things like that, and, for us to bring them up. And I think that's one of the things we're concerned about. If we do find, as we have, the fissures are a case in point, as a rocket. Are you saying we have to go through the city council first? This says we initiate that, if it's something of that nature.
Can I answer that one?
Yeah, please.
So typically what happens is, and that was a really good example, is that something like this comes up where we find an inconsistency or a discrepancy or an interpretation issue with the zoning code. And the planning commission is clearly we need to clearly work on that. That's something that I would go back to the city manager and say, hey, is there budget in there for me to work on this? And yes or no, and then he may have to take that to the city council, to doing a budget amendment or whatever. But then that's where it comes to asking to go forward. That boils down to a budgeting issue. Once it's cleared and I can work on that, then the planning commission is the first place that it goes. You can only make recommendations on zoning changes. You can't actually affect the change because they're the top of the
I
pyramid.
understand that.
Right.
My question is this, so I'm not criticizing, I'm just trying to figure out how do we go about doing that because we can't talk about it unless it's on the agenda, but we can't put it on the agenda unless it's
I think,
already been, and
I don't think it's a hard fix.
That's something, if you were to come to me and say, you as a planning commissioner or you as the planning commission were to come to me and say, we have an issue with this that we're seeing.
but we can't
You-
do that.
Yes,
It can only come individually because of the Brown Act.
We can't
talk
have
about it
discussion.
before, and
Exactly.
We can't even talk about it at the meeting.
you
Not
are
on the agenda, and we can't.
all able to talk on items not on the agenda. So if there's a meeting and and you want to bring up something, you can talk on items not on the agenda. And then we can't take, you can't take action, we can't take action, but it's direction to staff. That would be where the trigger where I would go to the city manager, different hat. The city manager and say, is there funds for me can I work on this? This planning commission has asked for that. The other avenue is that the planning commission can, if you see an issue that comes up, you can, as the chair representing the planning commission, go to a council meeting on items not on the agenda and ask that staff be directed to work on something. That is another,
We do that as
And-
a planning commission member.
I was under the impression I'm only allowed to be participating in a public comment manner as a citizen. So this is something that I had actually reached out to Mr. Lee regarding extensive questions I had because there seems to be a lot of conflicting published information in which there are exceptions or amendments or pivots or changes, and there's no explanations that are provided as to when those pivots and exceptions will be made or taken or by whom. And this is another example in which I feel we're being given conflicting information. Going back to the circumstance we had over the summer with the last agendized meetings from August and September, I was the one that brought those legal issues to your attention, Ms. Peters. It was another council member that brought those legal issues. They were not caught by staff. They were then referred to Mr. Verinsky. We had multiple planning commission meetings held on this subject. It was because I was provided an agenda, which is what is not taking place per the protocol manual, which is under Article 710, Staff Relationship to Advisory Bodies. Staff support includes item number 1, preparation of a summary agenda and appropriate notice after approval by the chairperson. That is not occurring. I am unclear as to why it's not, and when it is occurring, what circumstance would be required for that to happen. I'm not even making issue that I need to be notified. I'm simply asking why we aren't following our published protocol manual. I'm asking why our city attorney
I'm
is
happy to
sending
respond.
communication to us in conflict with what is published. These are questions that we have collectively. I'm representing as the chair of this commission because these are not the first time that these issues have been raised either.
I'm happy to respond. That I know the section that you highlighted. It's a rather broad stroke sections on how committees and commissions work, and I would like to refer to my explanation of why this commission is unique, of why the agenda really needs to stay in staff's hands. But I think the council is exploring an update of the protocol manual, and there's some clarifications we can make.
And you also just mentioned in this meeting that we can be sent the agenda in advance. I'm merely suggesting that because agendas can be published with incorrect and erroneous information, perhaps it would behoove to allow the commission to be greater involved because there is a level of expertise that's being dismissed. As Vice Chair Gebhardt has just displayed, I've actually been on this commission for 10 years. I do have some personal experience with various things that have occurred on this commission. There's been a lot of examples of things. I think Mr. Politi brings up an example of the reason why I requested that we have some more training last year when we appointed new commissioners, because these are not things that I am unaware of. They're actually requests that I've made and that have gone completely.
We did the training. I provided the Planning 101.
Provided a snapshot training. We haven't had, as Commissioner Bowl had requested, a think tank meeting with the Ione City Council, with Parks and Recs or the Creek Committee. We haven't had any kind of collaborative meetings of that nature. In my time on the commission, those are absolutely sprinkled throughout the decade I have served. It has only become an absence in recent time. And I think we're possibly seeing some of the results of that by the comments we're seeing today.
I'd like to add, I sent out a letter to the staff, including city clerk and city manager and everybody here, trying to say, okay, let's have a meeting here, but I understand we have to have an agenda. And then I put 3 things on a proposed agenda, no vote expectations, public invited, just to get to know each other and move ahead in this common direction. What I'm hearing today partially is a total contradiction to what we were told in the letters, because after I sent out this email, I got a response from the city manager saying, nah, it's not going to happen. And then a couple of days after that, we got scolded by the city attorney for doing things. I've only been on this commission since August. However, historically, I was on the commission for 6 years and on the council for 6. Not all my experiences with staff have been pleasant ones. Not all staff members have moved in the right direction, which is why one of the reasons we've had turnover. We've seen problems or flaws, and so forth. So, and that goes way back as Castle Oaks was being constructed, the golf course, the fire station, the clubhouse, and Mule Creek. A lot of things that were promised and weren't done properly, and I blame a lot of that on staff issues. So I'm a little concerned about putting too much faith in staff without us being able to check on them. And I don't think we're allowed to do any checking unless we're given permission to discuss about something. And I, for one, I think we should have a little bit more autonomy in what goes out there. Knowing our restrictions and our legal obligations, I think we're getting our hands slapped and we're getting held back on trying to do the job that we're, to serve our community. So, and, like this agenda is staff generated. Our ideas were rejected, but this is staff generated. So I saw that and I said, wow, we've been bad kids, and I think, I think if this was going to be on the agenda, it should have been, I mean, the chairman didn't even know what was coming on the agenda or discuss if there should be these items.
No, I wasn't even advised until I received the agenda at the same time as the public receives the agenda.
One of the things I'd
I've
like to
tried-
know also, okay, you said about, what I said was bad, Mark said I could get us in trouble. Why is it in the city of San Jose, where I was born and raised, had a business there, 2 locations from 1976 to 1993. Okay, been to plenty of planning commission meetings. I mean, signage, you name it. Okay, city of Santa Clara. I lived 6 miles. Was born and raised 6 miles from the, not even 6 miles, 4 miles from the borderline of San Jose in Santa Clara. I had property in Campbell, right in the corner of Winchester and Impala Drive. Okay. The city council's there, excuse me, the planning commission's there. Okay. They tell the planner, they tell the city council the different areas, the businesses that they want. Okay, they tell them we want residential here, we want apartments here, we want commercial here, we want heavy industrial here. Okay, and we can't even have a discussion on future development without this a fear of getting sued that you're telling us. Okay, why can they do it and we can't?
I'm happy to offer some remarks, but other than there's just a lot of liability that we have to protect you because you might have to recuse yourself.
That's fine,
So
and
it's
I
not
believe that,
at
but
planning
I
commission.
want-
It's not a
if we're-
freewheeling discussion.
If the city of Ione is governed by the state of California, I want to know why City of San Jose, City of Campbell, and City of Santa Clara can designate areas, rezone, tell them that don't even come to me with you want this, okay? We want an amusement park over here. How do you think Great America got in? How do you think the Levi Stadium got in?
Only that many of these are policy matters that come from the council. And so they're not things that are just initiated by planning commission. But
So in other words, we
I do want to offer some responses to Commissioner Bowl and Chair Hoyska. We feel like we've offered some solutions of how to get these concerns addressed, right? You can write to Ms. Peters. We can have, when it's your time for planning commissioner reports, future agenda items, that is an opportunity at every meeting for you to raise concerns and staff can go follow up with council. You can also come to council meetings and bring that straight to the council. There's a variety of ways to do this. It's just, there are other limitations that some of them are budgetary. Staff cannot prepare those items and give you the information unless it's directed by the city manager and council. And so we're hitting a point where there is a division of roles here between the planning commission and staff ultimately is not controlled by the planning commission. So everyone has to respect their role, and we think there is a way to get some of your requests when you have concerns so that staff can review and prep them and bring it to you for further review. It's just, it has to go through a process so staff can be involved and you don't hold meetings without
Okay,
this.
with that, why can't we have a workshop with the city council?
We can bring your request to the council.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just like Amber said, how long ago?
This was requested throughout last year. You only have to look at the meeting minutes to see that we have agenda items requested at every meeting. Now, admittedly, we've only had 4 meetings last year, 2 of which were agendized for the same matter. But we've had very, very few meetings. At each of those meetings, as I mentioned, when we had the Mizrakas making comment regarding how many times they have come to make comment, it seems as that that is not a good format with which to rely upon for agendas to be taken seriously, because for about 18 months now, we have expected that process to be taking place. Are we supposed to be under the impression that there is a change going forward and that we can actually have discussion be taken with a meaningful effort going forward in 2026? It's a serious question, just like I asked seriously about the interpretation of some of these published items, because I am completely at a loss for what else we are supposed to rely upon, because surely it is not feasible to have the mayor, the attorney, the city manager, and our planner attend every planning commission meeting to referee these matters, especially since we're now being advised that meetings are resource-driven. Isn't that right, Mr. Varinsky?
That's true. Every planning commission is resource-driven.
That's a change
The change.
that was unannounced. The announcement apparently came in the December 17th admonishing email that we received. That's the first indication we've had that meetings are now being resource-driven and that the Planning Commission is being metered out a budget in which we can hold meetings.
It's true.
That's not 100% true. When projects come up through the development community, then they are brought to the planning commission regardless of any other
But that's
issues.
entirely true, Ms. Peters, because there's examples again of items in which, for example, the city council requested be brought to the planning commission and they were not.
These things that you're talking about have to be brought to us. They have to be. So it's
Yes.
really not a matter of budget driven or not.
Exactly.
They have to be. But there's other things that, we would like to discuss. And I have one specific example here that I want to go through just to see how it might work. But we were never given, if there's something that we want to bring up, which, as it says, we're supposed to initiate things like that, we can get hamstrung because somebody said it's not economically feasible. Let me just start on.
You can request, just the work has to be authorized. Because planning commission doesn't control staff.
We don't control staff or the budget, but okay, let me back up and try and keep this diatribe short. So many things come up, like this whole commercial bit because of, Pete and Patty, and then we see how it applies to other things. This came up to me, and this is really a much bigger thing with the gas tanks out here and finding out that they'd initially been approved simply by the city planner as a temporary thing. Now that surprised me, and I looked to see where the authorization for that came from, which led me to this, our entire zoning code, which was completely redone, and it says at the beginning, this replaces any prior stuff in 2022. The planning commission, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but we were never given this. It went through the city council and it passed 3-1. Diane Ratton wasn't there. The only one that voted against it was Stacy. And this thing has so much, it changed so much. And what it did was took power away from the planning commission. There are things that would come up now, say for instance, the sign thing out there by the golf course. We went round and round with that. That was a planning commission thing. Now, if you read this, city planner decides, doesn't go to us. Here's another thing that came up.
Let me just make the record clear. I didn't make any of those changes. That predates me.
I was going to get to that, and I have said that before. This was from the prior planner. You inherited it,
Yes.
and no, yes. And I also understand that this temporary use thing for the gas bit was the only time that you have used that section. None, I think.
And I don't plan on using it again.
Well, and again, this section has a list of temporary uses that the city planner can approve, and they all make sense, you know, the little, a carnival, a yard sale, or this or that, and that's all great. And then you get to the next paragraph, similar uses, which gives at his or her discretion, happens to be you at the present time, to decide anything within this chapter, the whole zoning section, if they think it's a similar enough use, they can grant the similar use without ever going to the planning commission. And this particular one was a, you know, big gas tank out here with permanent cement foundations and stuff. Here's my question. We got along just fine without this section for decades, you know, in forever, up, you know, since 1953. If we wanted to bring this up to the city council to have this section removed, so the city planner would not have the ability to do things, really anything on their own, how would we go about bringing that up to the city council?
You write to staff, you mention it at a planning commission meeting, or you go straight to the city council. And if you bring it to us first, staff can prepare an item and bring it to the council.
And for the record, I actually like when it's that black and white because I don't like making land use decisions. That's not my job. My job is to provide you with information so that you can make those land use decisions.
I understand that. And again, this is not you at all, but you know, we don't know. I can think of some city planners we had in the past, particularly the ones that got this thing through, that I could see them abusing the living hell out of it. The one before that.
They sure did.
So yeah, surely we're all, this side is taking notes on all these items, surely, but to illustrate the practical effect of it, to draft a new zoning ordinance, to remove that section, to redline it, to send it to code publishing. Legal's probably going to draft it and it's going to be hours of work. That's something that just needs to be approved before we actually go and spend that time.
So in this part, I understand what you're saying, and yeah, I've written.
And that's the only, and that's just one of the limitations. And so we have to bring it before that work can be done.
In this particular, I mean, you would still have to write your opinion and all that, but as far as drafting, this would just be
Yeah. it's just
striking
like-
out this one.
Yes, we hope so, right? Sometimes there's other little consistency things that you have to, but it needs the proper time and review, and we just need to get that authorized.
Now, I asked this before, I didn't really get an answer. If I were to go to city council, can I, if I just, you know, go as an individual private citizen, that's one thing. Can I go on my own and say I'm representing the planning commission?
So I say you're representing yourself as a planning commissioner. and
Can,
not the
can
whole
we
council.
all attend a meeting?
Yes,
We can.
yes, and you come up, but I mean, you only have you would come up at public comment and make your comments. The only,
I'd like to make a comment. I agree with Mr. Polidi's assessment of what's gone on in the past. Since I've come here, I've been appalled, absolutely appalled at the things that our city council has done over the years, especially in my recent tenure. So I did a great deal of study, especially on the results of the development of the residential areas of Castle Oaks. And I was absolutely staggered at the abuse and corruption that went on relative to the things that we were allowed the developers to do, what we requested of them as part of our agreement to give them their permits, and what actually got done. It's millions and millions of dollars. God knows somebody stole something somewhere, but I don't know who did it. But I will tell you this. Excuse me. I lived in the city of Campbell for 40 years. I was involved with Parks and Recs. I was involved with the planning commission and I knew many of the planning commissioners. The planning commission in Campbell worked hand in hand with the city council. The city council didn't do anything, unless it went through the planning commission. And I will tell you that over 90% of the planning commission recommendations to the council were approved by the council. They rarely ever changed. They never overturned it. They would send it back for clarification only. But the working relationship was incredible. There was no rezoning done without planning commission involvement. I don't want to insult anybody, and God help me if I do. Every time I look at that zoning map, I want to puke. It's unbelievable what a mess it is. You want to see a beautifully done one? Go to the city of Campbell. They laid that out. Everything is in its proper place. Commercial's where it belongs. Residential's where it belongs. And it works, and it's beautiful. And all of the beauty of the city is preserved within the residential area. They take their industrial stuff and they put it in a section of Campbell. Now, Campbell geographically isn't much bigger than Ione. In fact, I think geographically it's smaller when you include the county, the part of Ione that's in the county. The population, about 30,000, so a little bigger than us. But this started when they were 10,000. My thing is, if we don't change this moving forward, it's never going to get any better. And we can talk about what you can do and what you can't do. What we need to figure out is, going forward, how do we do it? How do we get a zoning map that makes sense? How should these people ever have to go through that? If you went through something like this in Campbell, they would have been given a waiver and it was done. And the fact that they can't get insurance or a real estate person to take the property, I understand that. Nobody wants the liability. But the fact of the matter is, if we were zoned right, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
I mean, it just staggers me. Multi-use. That's like a blank check.
Just say that.
Yeah.
Let me finish, please. There's a piece of property in the city, a very valuable piece of property, as an example. Our schools. I'm not sure what they're zoned, but if we don't rezone them to something that makes sense, the school department is going to sell them. And that's prime property. It's worth a lot of money, because it's worth a lot of money to somebody to develop it. And that's a perfect example. We should be protecting our resources. We want to get the schools back in this city. You're not going to get them back if you let them sell that property. Okay.
Madam Chair, just to keep us to the agenda, we've talked a lot, maybe open it up to public comment would be.
I'm not done. I've got more to say.
Hart had something to say, as well as Commissioner Bowl.
Yeah. Once again, there's contradictions out here based on the criticism the city received on its huge legal bill. You said that, oh, if we have issues, we can contact staff and you'll help. Well, I find that contradictory to a statement that was made in a recent communique that said, read in part, going forward, I would respectfully ask the commissioner to refrain from making demands of the staff.
Commissioner Bolt, that's a confidential, privileged email, so I would advise you to refrain from reading it aloud on the record.
This is in part. Okay. But bottom line is, you told us that, and you also blatantly threatened us and reminded us that we're subject to removal by a majority of the council, which everybody can know that without being told or reading it. But I didn't like that approach. I felt that you could have handled it a lot more successfully by taking a different approach without being threatening. So I did not like that one bit personally. I don't know how others feel, but and then when I got the agenda for today's meeting, it was obviously just more of the same about telling us how we're doing what we should be doing based on staff. But as members of this commission and residents of Ione, what we really cared to investigate didn't really matter. So, I think there's been failure on staff to do their job to communicate properly and successfully with this commission.
I disagree that staff imposed this agenda
why
on us, because they did not.
Why we're here.
I requested it.
Thank you. I was
Okay.
just gonna say that.
I requested this agenda based on a previous meeting that we had, trying to find out how we can better serve this community and increase the number of meetings we have without having stupid meetings and do nothing. Okay, so don't blame the staff on this. That was me.
Okay, thank you. We have no clue.
That's how Commissioner Caputo got the meeting held, was by requesting it. And we've requested agenda items that have gone unanswered. That's part of the concern I emailed you regarding, Mr. Lee.
If I can address the
I would
board.
appreciate it. You
Well,
said you would address it at this meeting.
I
Thank you.
appreciate all of the comments of the board. I take them to heart, and the gist that I'm getting that a lot about these issues involve communication. So I commit to you, all of you here right now, that I will do a better job in terms of communication, in terms of when it comes to agenda. I do believe, Ms. Huesca and Mr. Gephardt, that you should have the courtesy of reviewing any agendas in the future, and I will commit to providing that information, okay? With respect to anything that has happened in the past, I can't speak to that. The development of Castle Oak has happened, it's been built. I think everybody acknowledges that there were some serious mistakes made in terms of planning, in terms of oversight. I think, in my personal opinion, having a real estate background, I do believe that that could have been a much better project, but it is what it is. You can't really change it. What you can do going forward, like Mr. Politi suggests and so forth, you guys will have greater oversight in terms of how that, whatever potential development, that comes before the commission, how that is built out, okay? And I think the advantage that this commission has is you have the benefit of hindsight 2020. You can see all the mistakes or the errors in judgment that was made in the past. And I think you will have a greater ability and insight to change that from ever happening again. Like I said, there is an extraordinary amount of things and projects that will be coming forward to the Planning Commission in the very near future. I, for one, have realized that it takes a lot of time to cross all the i's and cross all the t's. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm getting better in terms of making sure that everything is following the proper procedure to bring things to the Planning Commission. So again, I do believe that you folks will have a greater impact and ability to give your opinions and thoughts into projects coming before us. And I do believe that you'll have the benefit of hindsight because again, we're kind of limited in what's left in Ione because we have the commercial development, we have a potential residential development coming online, and for the foreseeable future, that's it, because our general plan only has certain components. But I do assure you that, hey, because of my real estate knowledge, things of that nature that may have happened in the past, it won't happen because again, I don't believe that staff at that time had all the knowledge that they should have had. But again, I think the main point is that you folks will have greater insight because you'll have the advantage of hindsight in 2020. So again, I commit to you, I will make a greater effort in terms of communicating with you, Ms. Huesca, and with you, Mr. Gephardt, in terms of bringing forth the agendas and making sure that you are aware so you can pass it on to other commission members.
I really appreciate the thought, the statement, and I believe that you will. Larry's got a good point. We need to start with rezoning, okay? Then we have to have correspondence with the city council and get this ironed out. So let's start there. I mean, it's just the frustration of it's like taking your car to a mechanic and it's still not fixed.
I would ask Ms. Huesca to maybe send me an email on what particular item that you would like on the agenda. For the future council meeting, that way I can have it on the agenda.
Okay, then what I propose is our next meeting, we have a discussion period. Okay? You guys up to that?
Yes.
and then we decide what we want to put
Yeah.
forth.
But I would request that it be very specific. So
Yeah.
again, we
I
can
agree.
keep it,
Sound reasonable?
we can keep it.
That.
No, I'm saying, well, like I said, let's start now. You know, let's.
Haven't we done that though in this meeting is make items requested? Like, for example, I think we have this redlined zoning here. I think that we also have the, what did we call it? Like the combined think tank meeting with the Ione City Council.
Yeah.
That would be an item number 2. I think that we would all like to know what is happening with the 15 Plymouth Highway property as far as the 20 or so properties within that as a separate issue from the ordinance project that Ms. Peters is mentioning. And lastly, I think relative to what we have been discussing today about communication, Mr. Lee is indicating there's an amendment to the city's protocol manual. At this time, I would be most comfortable working with what is published in our protocol manual, which states that we will be communicating recommendations to the city council through the city manager's office. That is what we have been advised. I have certainly made myself a physically present at city council meetings in the past. I have not been met with a courteous response as which we are giving everyone today. And I don't think that it is in my responsibility to continue to be personally responsible for that, especially when, as I've made inquiry of as well, Mr. Varinsky, you have made very clear that there will be punitive consequences for people working outside of the scope, which you say tonight is changing. So I think that we all appreciate putting these things into record and into the public agenda for further discussion, because these are things that have been ongoing for some time. And I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Lee, that we can see a change going forward. And with,
I would appreciate if you could send me an email with
With
your
those
priorities,
items?
with your
Okay.
priorities in terms of which items you would want to be placed first. Because again, depending on what other items we have, I might be able to only address 1 or 2, and then maybe in subsequent meetings, having some additional points that you want. But if you can place the items as a priority matter, then I can.
Could the rest of the
We're gonna-
commission be copied on that correspondence?
I
Mr.
can't, I cannot correspond to all 5 members.
That's a Brown Act
It's a
violation.
Brown Act
Brown Act
violation.
violation.
What I would propose is that each of the commissioners provide a suggestion of what you each as individual commissioners see needs to be worked on. And then I would take that and combine it with what I'm already working on and create a work plan proposal draft that would be brought back to the planning commission at the next meeting to determine if you're in concurrence with that work plan. And then that would be submitted to the city council through the city manager.
When you
I think
say
it would be more.
provide to, I'm sorry, when you say provide to, would that be to you, to George?
I think it would be
The
more
number?
efficient if all of your desires could be funneled to the chairman, and then she could correspond with Ms. Peters, as opposed to maybe 5 of all of you corresponding. I think it'd be more efficient if you all funneled your requirements to the chairman, and then she would, as the chairman.
Is that a serial meeting or no?
It's best if we could always do this at an open meeting. So if each member puts their points together and sends that to staff, that would be the best way. And then we bring it to a meeting with all of you there.
So do it like Mr. Paliti was saying.
Yeah.
Have sort of an open discussion first on what we want to talk about in the
Yeah,
future.
thank you. Heard from-
If you get your opinions on what your each individual priority is to me, then I can put them all together in a staff report and include the things that I'm working on that are going to be coming to you in the very near future. Including, we've got our annual housing report that has to be done. There's the general plan dashboard that needs to be done. There's some state mandated things that have to be done, and that needs to be put in that work plan as well. and I can have a description of all of those items. And then with the planning commission's concurrence, that can be sent to the city council as the planning commission's work plan for 2026.
Can I amend that? I don't know how to say this, and it sounds like I'm being smug. I came out of the corporate world. And one thing I know is if you ask everybody to give you what they think is important, you're going to have 60 things.
Yep.
And all of them are important, okay? And you will accomplish none of them. 'Cause you
That's
can't-
why it comes back.
So my recommendation would be for us to figure out what the top 5 are. 1 being the most important, 5 being the least important. What I have found when you do projects like that, when you take off the number 1, 2 and 3 go away because they're all tied to each other. And you'll be able to get something done and we'll be happy and the public is going to be happy. If we give you 20 items, I don't want to use the term we give, it's a cluster.
I understand what you're saying. Let's try it this way because I think most of you are in line or in concurrence about what needs to be done with the zoning. At least that's what I'm hearing tonight and what I've heard in past meetings. So I think that while I understand what you're saying, I do believe that there is a little more concurrence already in place. And I don't think I'm going to get 20 things from each.
That's also,
single
I think, Ms.
So
Peters.
Can
that-
we have a meeting that it was discussed and we can have an open discussion and we collectively can come up with 5, whatever, what's the number? I don't know what the number needs to be. A small list that's manageable and it can be tracked because one of the things I made a note here, who the hell follows up on the action item? I don't know what you call them here. In the corporate world, it was an action item. You're going to take care of that? Okay, when will you have it done? Who follows up on that? My observation is since I've lived in this city, it's been almost 6 years. I'm not a long timer, but I love this place. Nobody does. I have been hearing promises for things that are going to get done for 5 years and they're still not done. And they come from some pretty important people. So who does the follow-up? I mean, the things that happen with the developers here, because there was no real follow-up, that's how it happened. Look at the streets in Wildflower. There's no follow-up.
Okay,
We need
so
to have that.
there's a reason why when I give you conditions of approval, my style is to always put who's responsible for that follow-up built into those conditions of approval for that exact reason. So like George said, we can't be accountable for what's happened in the past.
I
We
agree.
can only learn from those mistakes and move forward. And that's one of the ways that I deal with that exact issue. But let's give this a try. Get me your concerns. I will consolidate them into one draft document, and then we can have that open discussion about what the priorities are and what needs to get done for 2026 at our next meeting.
So I agree. I had a conversation at the city council meeting. I said basically that do not let the sins of the past be the sins of the future. And do not let the sins of the past be the reason why you can't move forward.
But part of the sins of the past are still with us. When
Yeah,
when
very
you
much
look at
so.
the zoning map, like you
Right.
say, to me, and this kind of has to be kind of in the back of our minds. It's not easy to change zoning, but to me, there's 3 things that have kind of directed our map, not always in a good way. One was the city planner 3 planners ago, Mr. Jordan, who had a completely different idea for the city than anybody else did. Like I said, he wanted to make it the next Elk Grove and, expansion as much as possible and commercial, et cetera, et cetera. He was there when completely redid the zoning map. That was right before I came on the commission. The second thing is a lot of the big areas of zoning were done with kind of pie in the sky. They thought something was going to happen, so they zoned accordingly. One case, they knew Preston was going to close down. Everybody thought, oh, it's going to be a junior college, it's going to be this and that. They're going to build a bridge across the creek up here. They rezone all it, which now we're looking at, how they rezone on Waterman, that little bit for high density, because they thought they were going to build dorms there. And now we're looking at, a low income, which we need, but that's things like that. That's why things are in certain places. And the third thing, this town was here for a little over 100 years before we incorporated. And it's, it's like going to Austin in Texas or something. It's just like, it's piecemeal somewhat about, so it's really hard. It's not like laid out on a grid where this is here. So it just makes it difficult. Plus, we have this almost a unique thing for a small town like this of two state highways crossing in the middle. And anyway, but some of those things as we go forward, I think we have to keep in mind, and what can be undone, at least try, but keep that in mind, why it is where it is. Because some of it just really doesn't make sense. It may have made like potential sense at the time, but now it does not.
For my motion?
Is that,
No, just.
so are we gonna wait a full month for another meeting and,
Well, it sounds like we already have
No, I think you have some things on the next agenda.
sounds like we have a February agenda item as well as,
Is this item, yes.
yes, as well as this item.
The 2026 Planning Commission Work Plan. That's what we're going to call that.
Do you think this, the potential gas station at the end might be at the next meeting?
I have it tentatively scheduled for that. It just depends on, and that's what I put on my distribution application.
We find out what's tentatively on the schedules.
Pardon me?
How do we find out what's tentatively on the agendas?
Don't.
So we wait till the agenda comes out.
What we've been meeting about.
We have something, we give it to the chairperson and she works it into the agenda.
Yeah, but my concern is that, is that, when a process is, you're going through the process, I do have some milestones that I have to meet timeline wise. So I can't just postpone, or I can't, I have to be able to put things on the agenda when they're ready to go on the agenda.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Whatever, and the information that's given to the commissioners in advance of that, just, they have to be limited, brief updates, and it really can't be more
There
extensive
can't be any
than that.
comment on it. So in the past, when I've done admit, and I'm not chastising the planning commission, but when in the past, when I have brought up items that application items, there's been comments about those specific projects, which is why I'm been hesitant to bring them up, is because there's been comments, and I don't want to, every applicant deserves the right to due process.
Right.
And if any planning commissioner is going to make comments about a project outside of a public hearing, that whether that's at a commission meeting that's not on a public hearing, or even out on the street to somebody, that's not giving that applicant due process. So I would, in the
You
meantime.
could be required to recuse yourself.
Yeah, and I don't want any of you to have to do that, because that's not, you're on here to serve the city and you want to serve the city. And if you have to recuse yourself, you're not doing what you're intended to do, right? So I would also recommend that every 2 years, you as planning commissioners are supposed to go through the ethics training. And that's where there's lots of really good, the Fair Political Practices Commission puts out that training. You don't have to wait every 2 years to do that training. I would recommend, as we're going into some of these big projects, it might not be a bad idea to sit down for 2 hours and in front of your computer and go through the latest and greatest law, cases in regards to Brown Act and how to process effectively hear projects, make findings, all of that. It would be probably beneficial for you to do that. Just a suggestion.
Commissioner Caputo, do you feel that we have addressed your agenda items?
Well, I'm fine with it. I got, what I wanted was on the agenda.
Must be nice.
And I think that was my rub. You know, there were attempts since August to get things on the agenda and poof to deaf ears. And
Yeah, the newest
and he
committee.
waves the golden,
Oh.
wand and it's done. So I don't know.
Just get into it. I gotta just get.
I'm
stuff done.
impressed. I'm impressed. I'm glad you were able to navigate the
Navigate is indeed
through
the
through
word
whatever you did, but I
that is utilized.
You know, I got one last thing to say, and Larry made a great point, which I talking about San Jose, Campbell, Santa Clara. I think it'd be a good idea that we follow some of the cities that have been so successful, and get. Yeah, take Larry and my advice. How about that? I'll say it right there.
Not Elk Grove.
Not Elk Grove. No, not Elk Grove.
Well, actually,
You
I
know,
was gonna say maybe attend like the City of Sutter Creek Planning Commission, which occurred yesterday, because I think trying to overlay a city like Campbell onto a city like Ione is maybe like some of what we're experiencing here, because it would probably be more prudent to attend some of the Amador County Planning Commission meetings or some of our other city planning commission meetings, like Plymouth or Sutter Creek, because those would probably give some insight into the way those other commissioners are representing local projects within their community and how to go about doing things
Well, you've got
effectively.
It would be nice too, also, if we get some more of the community to show up at these meetings. And especially that they.
Great out for your
80% of
community
them
at
are
this meeting,
transplants
Commissioner Palady.
from the Bay Area. You know, anyway, so
Did
anyway.
everyone get the chance?
You're calling us
Everyone,
Bats,
everyone's had their say with
calling us Bats, Bay Area transfers.
Yeah.
with their commissioner reports. Is there anything left unsaid at this time?
said too much.
I gotta go home.
All right.
We need, we have not taken public comment on this item.
Was this a public, okay. Okay.
So
It
it
was an
collectively
agenda.
opens up 1 through 3, you know.
Hang on a consent calendar. Okay, so then now that we have concluded our board discussion, I will go ahead and open up the meeting for public comment.
What I get out of this to make it legal, say if you get the plans for the Ringer Ranch, and I'm not a commissioner, so I can say that.
There you go.
And you guys, if you don't get the plans right, you don't get the engineer here to answer questions of what these lines are, and they ought to make the lines heavier where you can see them. I mean, they put them real fine so you can't read them, and you can't even read them without a magnifying glass. They do this on purpose. And I really believe if you guys don't know it, postpone it till the next meeting so you can look at it. That's what you could do. Drag it out. Heck with it. Get the right question before you okay all this stuff. It's like the bridge, and I can say this. They say the bridge on Golf Link Drive's a bridge. When they give them $1 million, I brought it up. I says, is this going to be a bridge or a culvert? It's going to be a culvert.
Yeah.
There's a hell of a lot of difference between the cost of a culvert and a bridge. That was never brought out. I had to ask them. And it's just like he mentioned Wildflower. They okayed them to put crushed rock in there instead of AB. That's why the road sunk, and that's proven. They did the same thing on this over in Village 10. That's why it's settling out there. Totally illegal. Thank you.
Any other comments at this time? And with that, we will adjourn our meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks for getting.
Oh, man.
Good meeting.
Yeah.
Good meeting. Thank you all.
Meeting.
That's the 4th of July in January.
Well, you must be strong, man. I don't know how long. I don't know how long.
Oh, I know.